Hi everybody, Rob here in Bakersfield, out on the back patio, and welcome to this week's Throwback Thursday. When I was a young kid, I read a book about the history of the Texas Rangers, and in that book there was a passage, I think if I remember correctly it was a quote that they had, something to the effect of, "One riot, one ranger," which basically meant if there was something bad going in a town, like a riot going in a town, a bunch of outlaws in there, you had one ranger sent in to take care of the problem. So that's pretty much all they had. They were spread so thin. Anyways, that stuck with me, and I was always impressed by the bravery of the Texas Rangers and wanted to grow up to be one. But as fate would have it, I grew up in Southern California, not Texas. So I became a San Diego police officer. And there were many times that I was sent in on calls with no backup because we were spread so thin. So that's what this story is this week. One armed angry mob and one officer. Now, let's get to it. I was working beat 46 John in the Sierra Mesa at the day watch. It was on a Saturday morning, and I got a radio call that a group of citizens are chasing a burglary suspect through the apartment complex. So I head over that way, and as I'm going by there, I get an update from the dispatch that some of the people in the group are armed with guns. So that makes it even a little more important to get there now. So now it's up to a code 3 call, so I get to respond lights and sirens. And of course, I'm responding by myself because there's no backup available. Everybody else is on radio calls taking reports of some sort. So I get there, shut off my lights and sirens, and I'm cruising around trying to find the crowd because it's a big, large apartment complex. It took up probably about 4 city blocks. Used to be old military housing, so it was a very big, large complex. And as I'm driving around, I spot the crowd coming in between the buildings. So I stop the car and I get out, and the crowd's coming towards me because they see me and I see them. So I'm standing on the driver's side of the car, and I see guys standing in the front of the crowd armed with rifles. And they're all yelling, "He went that way." They're trying to get me to go chasing after the suspect that they're chasing. But by now, the importance of my call is disarming that angry crowd before somebody innocent gets injured, or somebody not so innocent gets injured. So I yell at them, you know, put their weapons down, and they're all arguing with me, and I'm telling them, well, I can't do nothing about that until I disarm you guys and everything gets settled down. I can't have a armed, angry crowd chasing some suspect through the apartment complexes and everything. Well, they calmed down enough, and we had, yelled back and forth enough that the 3 guys in front laid their guns down, stepped back away from the guns as I had asked them to. So I come out from around my car where I had been, walked towards them, came over, picked the guns up off the ground, and asked them to all come on over to my car, and I told everybody else to go on home. And I'd be back as soon as I could to the house that got burglarized to get the information. There was no sense, running through the neighborhood trying to find the guy. He's probably long gone by now. So the crowd disperses, and I take the 3 guys that were armed with the guns, and we go over to my patrol car, and I lay the guns out on the hood, open up both sides of the passenger car, and have the guys sit down, and the other guy's leaning against the truck, and we're talking. And about this time, guy comes running up, and it tells me that he's an off-duty reserve officer, and asked me if I could use any help, because he'd been listening to all this on the scanner at home and knew I didn't have any backup. I go, well, yeah, it's all code 4 now, which means everything is okay. And they ask me, if he doesn't mind if he unload the guns for me. And, I got to run the serial numbers through the radio, make sure they're not stolen and everything. So I'm talking to the guys and I'm telling them, and of course we're having this big discussion because at this time in California, yes, it was legal to carry a weapon that was loaded, and as long as it was in plain sight. But it was not illegal, it was not legal to go running around shooting unarmed suspects or firing off shots inside the city limits. So even though they were totally within their legal rights to be carrying a loaded weapon in plain sight, the ramifications of that would have turned to an illegal action of shooting an unarmed suspect or firing their weapons off in the city limits. So I was explaining all this to them, and they were understanding it and everything. And I had planned on just getting their information, running, make sure nobody was a felon in possession of a weapon, make sure nobody had any warrants out for their arrest, make sure the guns were not stolen, and I was going to let everybody go on their way and go home. Well, my sergeant shows up, because he'd heard all of it going on, on the radio. And so he showed up knowing that I didn't have any backup, and asked if I needed any help. He wanted to know who's that guy on the front of the hood unloading the guns and everything. So I explained to him, he was an off-duty reserve officer, showed up, give me some help. He's unloading the guns, no big deal. He's wanting to know, well, am I going to arrest these guys? And I go, well, not really, because they haven't broken any law, so I'm not arresting them. I'm just going to run them through the computer system, and if they're all okay, I'm going to turn them loose and send them home. And he goes, well, I want you to impound those weapons for 30 days. Make them get them back from the detectives. And at the time, I guess, there was a law in the San Diego Municipal Code where we were allowed to confiscate people's weapons and make them have to go through the detectives, go through a background check to get their weapons back. And as long as there were no felony charges pending against them and they didn't have a criminal record and the guns were all legal, in 30 days they could get them back. So I was forced to do that. Now the three guys were very understanding about it because they were sitting there the whole time, heard me having the discussion with the sergeant about that I didn't really feel that was necessary, but he was ordering me to do it anyway, so they all understood. And were really pretty damn nice about the whole thing. So all the guns come back, none of them were stolen. All the guys come back, nobody's got any, felony record, nobody's got any warrants out for their arrest. Everybody gets to go home. I get to throw the guns in the back of the trunk of the car to impound later. And that's pretty much the end of the story for that day. Next week, I'm going to pick the story up as what happened Sunday with another burglary in progress. Same suspect, same neighborhood, same people. And I think you'll find that story pretty interesting. And this is probably going to end up actually being a three-parter, because after Sunday, what I did on Sunday surprised everybody in the neighborhood, and they were really pretty happy about it. And then the follow-up as to what happened Monday with the detectives was something really pretty good for the neighborhood. And of course I got screwed out of the commendation. But that'll be a story for another time in part 3. So, cliffhanger. Anyways, everybody got to go home. Nobody got shot. Nobody was pissed off. And it ends up having a happy ending for everybody in the end, except for the burglary suspect. Alright, see y'all guys next week for part 2. Bye-bye.